When a marriage feels shaky, most people don't respond with wisdom. They respond with panic. And the painful irony is that the behaviors that feel the most loving in those moments, the texting, the begging, the forcing of conversation, are often the exact behaviors that are making it worse. Today, we're talking about what panic actually looks like in a marriage crisis, why it backfires, and what to do instead. My name is Sonia. Welcome back to the Emerge Stronger podcast. I'm here with my co host, Melody. Hello, Melody.
Hello?
All right. This is a good topic. And I think a lot of people that find themselves in a marriage crisis do these exact behaviors.
Mhm.
And so, whether you've done them, it's just gives you good insight and reflection of kind of what not to do. Now, your feelings are very normal, but the trajectory of your marriage and the crisis that you're in could definitely change if you refrain from some of these behaviors.
Mhm. So I go back to whenever pretty much my husband was like, I'm done. I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. I freaked out, like completely freaked out, and definitely did. I mean, I bounced back and forth between anxious behavior and avoidant behavior, but in the beginning, it was more on the anxious side and texting and calling, especially when he was gone. He wasn't here. Initially, he was just gone to hang out with his friends and stuff like that. And then eventually he did meet somebody. And, it just amped up my emotions and I didn't know what to do. And so in my mind, I think it was like I wanted some response from him to know that he wasn't leaving forever, which I never got because he by that time was completely done. But I wanted that, and I thought, well, if we just talk enough, maybe I can convince him. Like you said, forcing the conversation, I can convince him to reconsider. And then I think at one point in time I like wrote him a couple of poems and texted it to him. I mean, to me now when I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, what was I thinking? But anyway, I was trying to express my love for him, just thinking if I just let him know that I love him enough, then maybe he'll reconsider. And everything I did pushed him away. Like everything I did. I mean, for him too, he is having his own flood of emotions that are different from mine. It could have been a flood of emotions for the walking away. Maybe it was some guilt from walking away from this marriage, or because he was in love with somebody else or something like that. So he had his own flood of emotions. And basically what I'm doing is I'm going to him to help me regulate my emotions. And he's like, I can't even regulate my own. I sure as heck can't regulate yours. And so that's why panic responses don't work. Texting and calling, expressing your love, sending flowers, when they say I'm done, chasing after them is just not a good idea, because it shows your own emotional dysregulation in the relationship, your own insecurities, sorry.
Yeah, and I can say from the other side of it, so being more on David's side, when I wanted to leave and wanted out of my marriage, and my husband was doing everything he could to stop me. And the more he did, the further away I went.
Mhm.
And the more he did actually solidified my reason to go, because it became so overwhelming. And like exactly like you're saying, I was going through a flood of my own emotions, but then having to deal with his too. So don't send the poem, don't send the song, don't text, don't write the email. I mean, that you're just
Or the
doing more
meme,
damage
don't
by doing
screenshot the meme and send it to him or her, either way.
it. Mhm.
What were your thoughts like when Jason was doing those behaviors where he was kind of chasing after you? Like, how did you see him?
Oh gosh, I didn't see him as someone that I'm just going to be honest, Melody. I was so cold. Like I had turned so cold that I really just didn't have any positive reflection. I wasn't necessarily super negative either. It was just very neutral.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I just turned so cold.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of times it was just almost like this feeling of, oh, here we go again
Yeah.
every time the text message would come in or
Mhm.
the email. What now?
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely, there's a part of me, and David's never told me this, But I was like, I wonder if he thought I was pathetic. Just stop. He probably didn't, because that's not really how he normally sees people. He more has compassion and feels sorry for them. But, at that point, he couldn't make himself be in love with me. Like there's had been such a disconnection emotionally. And he was enjoying his time with his friends. And again, like I said, he did eventually meet somebody else. But he was so emotionally disconnected, like he couldn't force himself to feel what he wasn't feeling at that point in time. But, for me, I'm like, oh, I felt like I was being pathetic by doing that, and just begging and pleading for him to come back. I mean, it, I, I would like to say it didn't last that long, but it lasted a couple of months where I would do that. And I didn't do it every day, but if I was at home alone and I wasn't distracted by something, I would lean into that. If I had, a drink, I definitely would lean into that.
Hmm.
Your inhibitions are lowered when you drink, and that just was not a good thing. So step one, I was like, I don't need a drink in the next few months, because I end up doing these behaviors that in my mind was pathetic, because I would always feel like he wouldn't respond. He did not call me and try to talk through it with me. He did not respond to me in text. The more I did that, the more quieter he became in his interactions with me.
And did that lead you into more of a panic cycle, or did that cause you to back off a little bit? Because I can see it both ways.
Yeah. I think initially it did amp up my anxiety about the situation, but one good thing about me is tend to learn lessons pretty quickly. Like, he's not responding, so just stop. So then I just went into complete avoidance, and even when he did contact me, I wouldn't respond, because I was like, I don't know what to say. So I went to the other end of the spectrum, which was not good for the relationship either. You have to communicate. And so, and plus we had kids, so that was another thing too, is that I had to communicate because of them. I do remember the very first Thanksgiving, because the affair started in early October, and I remember the first Thanksgiving that he called, and I knew he was calling to talk to the kids, so I just gave the phone directly to the kids. And then he wanted to talk to me, and I literally got on the phone. Why do you want to talk to me? You're not here. Like, I was rude about it, which again,
Hmm.
and then for a while he didn't contact me because I was
Yeah.
rude about it. Yeah.
I remember a client several years ago that would send the text message or send the email, and they would be like, Sonia, she didn't respond, so I don't think she got it. So let me share with you the next email I'm going to send. And I would say, no, 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 that's not a good idea. Let's not send
Mm-mm,
it.
mm-mm.
And of course, he didn't listen. He sent it anyway.
Yeah. Not a good
She
idea.
would respond when it came to the kids, but she would never respond when it was the poem or the love story or let me remind you of our greatest times. I can
Mm-mm.
promise you, they don't want to hear that. Don't.
And I understand the heartbreak. I understand, when we feel emotionally dysregulated, it is a painful thing, sometimes even painful physically. Our hearts are broken, but it's not going to render you what you think it's going to render you. Looking at social media to see what they're doing is not going to render you what you think. A long time ago, the phrase, and I wish I could give credit to who coined it, but like they called it pain shopping. You're looking for
Mhm.
pain, and that is the truth. And so when you're sending all those text messages, when, even sometimes they might be loving text messages where you're expressing your love, and then, or it might be like, you, sorry, Saka, you know what? It might be those kind of text messages too. You're trying to elicit a response, and it's not going to be what you think. And so you're wasting emotional energy that if you just shifted and began to try to regulate your own emotions, you actually could be far more successful than if you're just letting your emotions run away with you. But the
Yeah.
panic, I understand the feeling because I was there. I totally get it. I mean, I remember sitting on the floor crying and just like, what do I do? What do I do? But it's not going to give you what you think it's going to give you. So take it from somebody that knows that. Don't waste your emotional energy, because again, your spouse, and it's not like, so many times I think the spouse that's been cheated on, or the spouse that's being left, thinks that the other person is just over there living this best life and doesn't think about them anymore. And that's just not the case. Like, they're dealing with their own, like we said, they're dealing with their own emotions, that they can't focus on your emotions, because they might feel guilt, they might feel shame, they might feel fear of what does their future look like. They could feel love for for some other person. There could be a lot of things going on there, and we just think that they're over there, oh, forget you. That's not really actually what's happening in a person.
Well, and we've said this before, and I didn't wake up one morning and say, today I'm going to hurt my spouse.
Yep.
Today I'm going to hurt my children. That it
Mhm.
doesn't happen that way. It happened over a period of time of my own dysfunction, of my own insecurity, of my own downward spiral. It just didn't happen in a
Yeah.
day.
And I think, like, I mean, like a good coach, you are taking responsibility for your own stuff. But Jason played a role. Like, I played a role in David wanting to leave, and David played a role in David wanting to leave. So we have to recognize that there are other contributing factors. Not trying to shift blame at all,
It's just a
but
reality.
I know I played a role in him wanting to leave because of some of my behaviors that I would not. I mean, in my mind, I seriously thought that if he would change, then everything would be fine in the marriage and I wouldn't have to change. And that wasn't the case. I had a lot to change.
What would you say to the spouse that says, I've been changing, I'm tired
Hmm.
of I'm tired. I'm done changing. I'm tired of making it. What was it? Sacrificing myself for the change of the marriage.
Well, I think I would say a couple of things. If you are tired of changing, your relationship will grow and develop and shift for the lifetime of the relationship. Like, it's just going to continue to grow. And so we have to be committed to always growing and developing, regardless of who we're in a relationship with, whether it's this spouse or some other spouse, or with our children or at work. Times can constantly change, things constantly change. You have to be committed to trying to be the best version of yourself. And the best version of myself when I was 20 is much different than when I'm 51. And the best version of myself when I'm 51 is going to be a lot different when I'm 61. So as time goes on, we always have to commit. If you are like, I'm not changing anymore, then let the relationship go, because you are not going to have a successful relationship. And the other thing is that I don't think that you should be changing for your spouse. I think you should be changing because it's the right thing to do,
Mm-hmm.
especially as a Christian, because we know that, like, I know right now at 51, the things that the Lord talks to me about are different than the things that he talked to me about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Because there was a lot of youth and a lot of immaturity, and I'm not saying that I've arrived, because I haven't. I am more mature than I was then. I am a little more willing to surrender areas of my life that I wasn't surrendered at then. And the Bible says he takes us from faith to faith, to glory. I think he takes us from one good version of ourselves to the next good version of ourselves. And so if your focus is, I don't want to change for this marriage anymore, your whole focus is off. You should actually say, Lord, I want you to transform me. I want you to take me from one level to the next, to the next. I don't want anything to block me from being in your presence, right? Because we block ourselves from the deep intimacy with God. God doesn't block it. We block it, right? I don't want anything to block my intimacy with you. I want you to show me the things, because I could go off on this, and I probably am. So just deal with me. When we worship, when we read the Bible, when we spend time in God's presence, God doesn't need us to do that. That is not for his benefit. It's for our benefit. And so we will not spend time with the Lord, not surrender things to the Lord and all that. And all it does is hurt us.
Yeah.
God's not up there weeping and crying because we didn't spend time in his presence. He has many people to worship him, right? His heart wants us to do it for us, not for him.
Hmm.
And so I don't want to be my own worst enemy. I literally had this conversation. This may be a little bit getting off the topic, but we'll get back to it. I remember having this conversation just last week with the Lord. I was reading in Psalms, and David was talking about his enemies. And I sat there and I said, Lord, I don't think I have any enemies except for the devil and myself. That is the only enemy that I have. Those two things. Other people are not my enemies, right? It's the devil and myself. I'm the one that blocks things because I haven't surrendered them to you. Anyway, sorry for getting off topic. It's completely off topic. But if you are saying you're not going to change in your marriage anymore because you've done enough changing, then you might as well let the relationship go because you're going to be changing for the rest of your life.
Yeah, no, that was a fantastic answer. I love that answer. And the only thing that I would add to that, and I think you kind of alluded to it, is you have to renew your mind. And sometimes that's renewing your mind every single day. Lord, help me renew my mind when you're feeling as though, oh, my spouse did this to me, or I'm so angry at them, or I don't want to change anymore. You have to renew your mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's how you help with panic. So let's get back to the real topic of conversation is if you are renewing your mind, you are spending time with the Lord, then that fear, like you're shifting from the amygdala to the part of the brain that is creative with God and has a great imagination on how things could be better and all of that. And you feel less of a need to reach out and text and beg and plead and, send the poems and all that kind of stuff because you're connected to the source. You're learning to regulate your emotions with the Lord.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we kind of already listed some of them, but I'm going to go through them really quick. So, the most common panic behaviors are over texting,
Mhm.
begging for reassurance, forcing conversation, emotional dumping,
Mhm.
and trying to prove love constantly.
Mhm.
So, really quick, we'll just go back to over texting. Like we already talked about that. Just constantly sending the text, just needing, feeling like you need a response. That's just not helping matters at all. It's again, it's push behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pushing them further away.
Mhm.
Begging for reassurance. Why are you leaving? Are you okay? Are we okay? Do you still love me? It's just anxiousness coming out in a text message.
I remember saying things like, you don't really love her. You don't really love her. You really love me. And I could, in his brain, I'm sure he was thinking, no, I really love her and I don't love you. Like, how can I tell somebody what they truly feel? Oh, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for helping me.
Well, but at that in that moment in time, it probably really did feel real to you, and that it
Oh, yeah.
was, I it's what you wanted to have happen. You wanted him to be like, Melody, you're right.
Mhm.
I don't love her. I love you. I'm coming home.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen that way. One thing that I wanted to say, I'm going to back up for just a second. And when we were talking about the whole topic is about panic. I think one thing that's really important and that people need to recognize is when you are in this panic cycle, of course, you're probably immediately going to go to a friend, maybe, or to a family member. But you have to be really careful about how many people you talk to and who you're sharing all of this with. And then I think that for us, what worked well for us is having somebody, a third party that's completely unemotionally attached to your situation. Because when you talk to a friend, they're going to probably have a little bit of a bias or a
Mhm.
family member. And so that's why it is important to talk to a coach. And so I guess my point in saying all of that, Melody, is just talk to us a little bit about how that helped you when you found your coach.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, when I would talk to my family about it, even I talked to my pastor about it, they were like, he's in another relationship. You just need to divorce him. And the thing is that your family, they love you and they don't want you to hurt. And we tend to be creatures of pleasure and not pain. And so we want the path of least resistance to that pain stopping. That's why people use drugs, alcohol, stuff like that, because they want the pain to stop immediately. But that does not, or it rarely renders you what you want it to render you. And for me, I just wasn't ready to let go of the relationship. And, I felt very inequipped to deal with this. I did not know what to do. And so when I talked to my coach, one, they helped me settle my fear. Okay. This is where your relationship is right now. It does not mean, like, this is not where it's going to be forever. And then he told me, here are some key things that you can do for yourself, not to manipulate the situation or control the situation, because that's not realistic. But here are some things that you can do for yourself, okay, that can be very beneficial. Here are some things that you should stop doing because they are negatively affecting your relationship. Stop being so cold. Stop trying to convince them to stay. Those types of things. That helped me. And then there was definitely a challenge to dig deeper, not only in my relationship with God, but also dig deeper and really be honest, like self-reflecting of what did I contribute to the breakdown in the relationship. And then a release of what I can't control, like really just accepting where things were at this point in time and knowing that I can't control everything. And there was like a million times where I wanted to throw in the towel because it was hard and long. 6 years is a long time and painful. But my coach encouraged me to live according to my belief system. It wasn't what he thought I should do. It was, what does your belief system say? And so having that coach alongside me kept me grounded in the situation. It helped me learn to be far less reactionary because I was at one time very event driven. I would be fine as long as no event occurred, like event being like they went on vacation together or I don't think they ever got engaged, but anyway, something would happen and, oh, they moved in together. That was another thing, that he was like, you cannot be event driven. Like, you're not wanting to act until you see some type of event. Okay. How do you keep from doing that? Well, stop looking at Facebook, stop pain shopping, like we talked about. And I just focus on you and don't become reactionary that way. So he helped me a whole lot put things into perspective. He also encouraged me, like when I would do something good, he would say, hey, you're right on track. This is exactly what you need to be doing. And it was never really a whole lot to do with David. Sometimes he said that interaction was positive or whatever, but it was like, I see the strides that you're making. I see how you are learning to regulate your emotions and calm down things and think it through before you act and all of that. So he encouraged me in those ways too. It was very beneficial for me.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so let's talk about what to do instead. One of them we just talked about, get support outside of the marriage. So that's good. The next one is pause before you respond. And so it's just, you need to not act so quickly upon, everything that the other person says. Give yourself some time to think about what you're going to say, think about what you're going to do. So just take a pause.
I want to say something right there, Sonia, because so many times we give other people control over our emotions. And you got to understand, especially if there's an affair involved, there are going to be things that are taking place. It could be, that the other person is pushing your spouse to divorce you. It could be that other person is pushing to meet your kids. There could be a lot of things they could say. Like if you post something, I remember posting something on like a picture of my kid and him on social media, like just taking a picture and posting it. Like, she began to like give him a hard time or give me a hard time through him, like, because he came at me about it anyway. So there's a lot of things that are going on the outside if they are in a relationship with someone else, or if they are just interpreting your actions wrong, because sometimes they can do that because of what they're feeling, even if they're not in a relationship with somebody else, even if it's just a lifestyle. If you have to put boundaries because they're making decisions that could potentially harm your kids or whatever, don't allow other people to control your emotions. You really want to stay grounded. And before you act, you want to pause, you want to breathe. You might wait a day or so before you say or do anything. Like really process what you do before you do it, because whatever you do has consequences. And sometimes the consequences are hard, even if you make the right decision, but at least you thought it through before you acted.
Yeah. And that's why we always say, like, is this an emotional response? Is this an emotional reaction? Or are you thinking clearly? And is this, a clear headed decision? Okay. Next one is focus on your own regulation first. So you can't show up well when you're flooded. You have to deal with your own anxiety before you try to deal with a relationship. And I'm just going to point it again back to two things: the Lord and a coach, somebody that can help you walk through all of that. And there's been times that, I've had clients that will email me or text me because they need to get something off of their chest, like their other spouse had just done something. And I think that, that's okay to get that other perspective, because it's just going to help you stay on the right track of not making a rash decision by
Mhm.
sending them a meme or a song or something like that.
Yeah. Or even going off on them, because that's a
Mhm.
factor too. They find something out and then they go off. And I did that a couple of times, but I learned very quickly that that was not going to render me again what I thought it was going to render me. And sometimes I wouldn't even think about what it was going to render me. It's just I felt passionate about something, and I don't mean passion in a good term. I mean it in a very, like, I'm completely unregulated and I'm
Mhm.
actionary mode, and I would not think about, okay, what could potentially happen if I say or do this. And man, coaching is really good to help you with that.
So let me ask you this. What if, put yourself back there just for a second, and what if you went to David and you asked David, what is it that you need from me? What
Mhm.
is it that you need me to do? What would what do you think that response would look like? And would you at that point in time be able to emotionally handle his response?
I think it would have changed over time depending on where we were. I think probably in the beginning, he probably would have said, divorce me, let me go. He probably would have said that. I think later on, it would have been, hang in there. Just, the song by Chris Stapleton is called White Horse. And it says, if you want
Mhm.
a cowboy, he's like, just hold on tight. I ain't there yet. I think he would have told me there. He would have told me that later on, because I do think that there was an aspect of him that knew he couldn't ask me to wait, but he really wanted me to. So I think it would have changed over time. I think it would have been like, stop taking everything I do as like I'm trying to hurt you, because I did. Like early on, it was like I had the mindset that he was waking up in the morning saying, what can I do to break Melody's heart and destroy my family? Like I thought that he was just evil, and that wasn't the case. So the front end, I think I did everything wrong. I think the back end, I did most things right. Not everything. I still had my moments, but it was through coaching and applying tools that I was learning, not just learning the tools, but applying the tools that I was learning, that really created the environment where he got to the place where he was like, just hold on tight. I'm not there
Yeah.
yet. Getting there, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah. All right, quick little nuggets here. Wisdom knows the difference between what needs to be said and what needs to be processed
Mhm.
privately. It's also something that you can go to the Lord with. Lord, put this on my heart if it needs to be said, or, just having that conversation with the Lord, getting guidance and direction from the Lord rather than from
Mhm.
yourself.
And not just what to say, but when to say it, because we can really feel like the Lord has us something to say, but if we don't measure where the other person's at, if they're highly emotional or they're tired or they're having an argument with their lover or whatever, and you start going in, yeah, you don't want to cast your pearls before swine. You want to wait until it's the right time. And I'm going to tell you and something that I tell many of my clients, especially the ones that are believers. One of the best things that you can do is read Proverbs every day. I read a chapter in Proverbs. Even to this day, I've been doing it for even before I married David, I was doing this. So this has been a long time, and it has rendered me so much. It has helped me so much, especially at work. I remember many times being not when I was doing this, when I was working in other line of work, I wouldn't say anything, until I was specifically asked for my opinion. And I had a boss say that he appreciated that about me. And I said, well, even a fool seems wise if he holds his tongue. And he would laugh at me, but I'm like, I learned that in Proverbs. Like I learned it from reading Proverbs, and it just renders you so much wisdom. It keeps you from making foolish mistakes. I think David writes, keep me from my willful sin. David writes that in Psalms, not in Proverbs, but it helps you stay away from willful sins. It helps you put things into perspective, and I don't necessarily need to do this right now. Let's think things out. So a chapter in Proverbs every day, you'll read it in a month and you just start over. And I'm still highlighting stuff, and I've been doing
I
that
love
for
it.
20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I actually learned that from you when I open up Proverbs and I read it because
Yeah.
Melody told me to do it.
Well, nice to know I
The most,
contributed somehow.
in many ways, the most loving thing you can do when your marriage is shaky is to become someone your spouse can actually come back to.
Mhm.
So talk to us a little bit about that. What kind of behaviors, what kind of things did you do that you felt like contributed to David's return?
Definitely learning to regulate my emotions. And the best regulator of emotions is spending time with God. It
Mhm.
definitely is, whether that was in journaling or prayer or reading the Bible or worship, like really learning to do that. Something that you may have said it in this podcast or the previous podcast, but it was to learn to shut up,
Yeah.
like listen. And I think another thing is I realized that how he felt in this moment did not mean he was going to feel that way forever. And that I could only do a portion of like changing behavior and being calm, not being a reactionary. That contributed to influencing the change of his, but that I also had to give the other portion to God. Like
Hmm.
really not try to control, accept him exactly where he's at. Acceptance is another big one, accepting exactly where he's at. And even though I could see us putting it back together, he could not see that. He was not on the road far enough yet to see us being able to put that back together. And I had to accept that that was okay. That just because he didn't see it today didn't mean that it couldn't be down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. If your marriage is feeling shaky right now, the fear you're feeling is real and it does make complete sense. But your first instinct is probably not your wisest move. So
Mhm.
before you send that next text, force that next conversation, or make that next grand gesture, you need to pause and you need to get support.
Yeah,
And so ask yourself, am I responding out of love or am I responding out of fear? Because your marriage doesn't just need your heart, it needs your wisdom too.
definitely. That's a good statement. Responding out of love or reacting out of fear, because man, fear will lead you wrong all the time.
All right. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, y'all.
If this episode hit home for you, if you're realizing that maybe some of your reactions have been coming from panic instead of wisdom, we just want you to know that you're not alone in that. We've been there, we've lived it, and more importantly, we've walked through what it actually looks like to come out on the other side. So if you're sitting in that place right now where your marriage feels shaky and you're thinking, I don't want to make this worse, but I don't know what to do, we've created something for you. You can download our free guide at itsnotover.net. It's called Before You Make It Worse: What to Do When Your Spouse Has Emotionally Checked Out. It's going to walk you through the exact behaviors to avoid, what panic actually looks like, and how to start showing up with steadiness instead of fear. And if you're wanting more support, real-time support, where you're not doing this alone, we also have our Emerge Stronger community. Inside, you'll get 2 live coaching calls each week, a community of people who also get it, and deeper resources and private podcast episodes to help you stay grounded. All of it for just $29 a month. So whether you start with the free guide or join us inside the community, just take the next step. because your story isn't over, and you don't have to walk through this alone. We'll see you in the next episode.